What's going on, everybody? We're back. Episode number 205 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC 311, and we're doing it from our new time slot. 7 p.m. Sunday nights going to be our jam going forward. Excited about it. Get it out there early in the week. Anything, obviously, we change thought-wise, we'll put out on Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, I'm excited about this card. It's a great card. Absolute banger. I'm really, really excited to jump into it. Before we get started, guys, though, drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And as always, we're brought to you guys by FightNumbers.com. For 30% off first month subscription there, use the promo code CLUB, C-L-U-B. Fight Numbers, they got a ton of good stuff there. They got bets from Pepe and Ozzy. Both of them crushed it last night, if I'm not mistaken. They got John Kelly's Trends tool, which, you know, maybe it's noise, maybe there's some signal in it, but you can figure it out. They got his DFS projections, which are great. And they got the live bot screen, which is also awesome. So check it out, fightnumbers.com. Use the promo code CLUB. Definitely worth your while. And yeah, before we jump into this, I'd like to welcome back my co-host, Flags. Danny did not make the first show of the year. He had things going on. Unfortunately, it was not a great week for Pennsylvania football, or so I'm told.
No, it's not. However, there is one Pennsylvania team right now that's going on that still has a Penn State player, Saquon Barkley, that is doing quite well. They're doing pretty good right now. So, got to root him on at least.
It's not much, but it's all you got right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, real quick, let's talk about last night. It was a fun card. It was awesome. From a betting perspective, it was pretty frustrating for me. It's like I put out, and I'll keep doing this every week, like all the stat props that I had. I had the under 1.5 takedowns for Carlston Harris at plus 110. I had the under 2.5 takedowns for Amanda Ribas at minus 165. I had the under half a takedown for Razak Al-Hassan at plus 165. And then I had the under 3.5 takedowns for Gadzi Asalov at minus 115. And I swept all of those, which was awesome. On top of which, I hit my biggest bet of the night, Thiago Moises, 4 units at minus 150. That cashed. Although, weird fight. I was talking to you about it last night, Lags, because, like, on the one hand, like, my entire thesis of the fight is why Moises won, like, calf kicks and top time. On the other hand, he never proactively tried to wrestle in the fight. He looked like a total fish out of water striking outside of the calf kicks. Like, I felt legitimately horrible about it, and then Ogden's leg got beaten up enough that he fell down. And then round 3, he tried to wrestle Moises, even though he was out striking him. So it worked out. Very weird. I'm not sure if it was plus EV or minus EV, to be honest. My other moneyline bet, unfortunately, was Chris Curtis. I feel it was a good bet at the number. It was a close fight. I think the complaints about the stoppage are... I mean, look, the stoppage was early, but we all know who was going to win that decision. It was not even going to be it was going to be 29-28, pretty clear cut. There's really no argument for Chris Curtis getting a round 3 card, in my opinion. And then I got blasted on totals. Well, first of all, I made a late ad yesterday morning. I added Austin Bashi by decision at plus 100. And you know what? I said he's the goods. I still think he's the goods. You know what? He didn't have the best performance. C-Rod's a tough ass. I still think he's going to be a stud. The dude attempted 18 takedowns. You know, not many guys can do that and keep pushing. But obviously, debut didn't work out. It was a bad bet and a bad decision to make that bet. I got off a fair amount live, but, you know, not enough. And I had a lot of regret about it. I had the under 2.5 rounds in Santiago Ponzinibbio and Carlston Harris minus 120, which was fucking AIDS. That was just...
Brutal.
Brutal stuff. Yeah, that was really awful. I mean, Pons almost gets finished in round 1, and in the last minute of the fight, Carlston Harris is basically unconscious on his feet before they stop it. That was good times. And then I had at least the 2 overs that I bet were both very, very quick decapitations. I had the over 1.5 in a Puna and Medic at minus 150. A lot of CLV on it. Didn't matter. And then I had goes the distance in Jacoby Smith and Preston Parsons also for a unit. And those fights ended in like a combined 60 seconds. So at least that wasn't so bad. But yeah, all in, I think I ended up close to break even. But yeah, like I said, I'll keep posting the stat props. If you have access to a DK account, they're great. But yeah, Lags, how was your night?
So we were chatting a little bit. I had an awful night, but to be honest, I didn't think my 3 bets were like awful reads in hindsight. Yeah. So obviously, first bet, the only one that did win was I played not Gadzi Azulov inside the distance at minus 155. Pretty much, I was just trying to target some kind of an over there, whether it was a plus 3.5 on Lopez over 2.5. It starts round 3, just some kind of anti-finishing there, which I like there. I had Jose Johnson moneyline -160 for a unit. Again, piecing Bunez, I thought, up on the feet for as long as that fight lasted. Ended up getting submitted. Again, it is what it is there. Quick fight. And then had the over 4.5 rounds in the Dern-Ribas fight, which we were chatting a little bit about as well. I thought that fight was cruising to go the distance, and then Ribas, for whatever reason, engages in the grappling. Again, giving Dern her most obvious path to victory, her any chance of winning the fight. And she ends up costing herself another check, ends up losing the fight, and ends up losing the over.
Yeah, I told you it was bizarre because I obviously had the Ribas under takedowns, but like when she attempted the second takedown in round 3, I'm like, what the fuck? Am I actually going to lose? Like she just got swept last round. Am I actually going to lose this bet because she just keeps trying to ram a square peg into a round hole? It was bizarre.
Sure she did. She did just that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think they were bad bets. But yeah, and guys, just to be clear, we're not trying to go head to head with stat diggers. We picked this slot going forward for a couple of reasons. First of all, I got 2 kids. Lags has a girlfriend and a busy life and a busy job. And so it's kind of all over the place during the week. The other reason is we're just trying to get a bit more exposure, get it out there earlier. There's not a ton of early week content. So we figured, it was a good slot to get us in there and, keep trying to build this up. So love the stat diggers, guys. And we know that, they go on at different times on Sunday night. We're going to be 7:00 every week. So, but yeah, let's pop into it. Sick card. Yep. What are your thoughts on the card? High level here, Lags.
So sick card, like you had mentioned earlier when we started the pod, but I don't think it's a sick card for betting. I was chatting a little bit with our boy Luke, our old boy Luke, I should say. Well,
he's our boy.
He's our boy. Old boy in terms of like having him on the pod. Sorry, Luke, didn't want to offend you there. But no, only 4 of the 14 fights are where the favorite is under -200. So it's just really tough ask, all chalk pretty much on this pay-per-view.
A lot of chalk, but I'm going to fade a lot of it. You know what what a bummer is, though? So, like, I'm a fucking moron, and I thought for some reason that this was in Saudi Arabia, and we were getting, like, a noon card here. So we scheduled hibachi dinner with a bunch of our friends, and like, I'll be back before the main card, but I realized this afternoon, I was like, oh, fuck, the card starts at 6. Like, I had no idea. On top of which, it'll be interesting because the card's supposed to be in LA. I'm assuming that's not going to happen. Yeah. I can't imagine they're going to have anything is going to be happening in LA for a couple months. So, and
now, why would you not
for the people in LA?
Now, it might be booked. Don't get me wrong, but why would you not want to move like this card to the Sphere?
That would be a good idea. I was actually wondering, is there a chance they move this to the Apex? Like, is that possible?
I think he's going to keep it a pay-per-view, right? Because like, where would all the
but they used to do well. They'd lose the ticket sales. That would be the real issue with it. But
well,
like, I have to imagine.
Like that would suck as like a fan. Like if you bought tickets already for UFC.
They're
like, oh, we're just moving it to the Apex. You guys are getting screwed out of your tickets.
But like, I have to imagine like most major venues are going to, for like a Saturday night, are going to be booked out. A week out. Maybe not everywhere, but
they don't find.
I'm sure they'll get it going. I'm actually kind of hoping it's in the Apex for selfish reasons, like Marab.
Right.
That wouldn't be so bad. But anyway, let's jump into it. A lot of chalk, like Lag said. I have a lot of strong opinions, though. I know probably will be on a lot of dogs this card. But first fight of the night, we got Bogdan Guskov taking on Billy Elekana. This is a late booking. I believe it was booked. It came to fruition last night. Guskov originally supposed to fight Johnny Walker. Current price, Guskov -300. The comeback on Elekana +250. Any thoughts here, Legs?
Well, first of all, I think this fight actually did get moved to later on in the card.
Okay. Well, it's on Tapology has it first fight still.
Oh, really? Because I'm on Tapology right now, and it does not.
Let me refresh it.
It's got it at number 9 for me.
You're right. Okay.
It's okay.
All right, we'll pivot off. We'll pull it back from Bogdan Guskov. Little rocky start on the first Sunday show here. Yes. First fight of the night, Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Clayton Carpenter. Current price on Ulanbekov -310. The comeback on Carpenter +260. I max bet Ulanbekov at -250 here. I like Carpenter. I think he's a pretty good prospect. Obviously, decent. Got some pop in his hands. Pretty good athlete. Pretty solid, very solid grappler. But I mean, fuck, this is a titanic step up in competition for him. You know, going from Edgar Chairez and what's that the other guy he fought? Rondon before he fought, and then Lucas Roca. I mean, that is like the bottom of the barrel. And like he didn't have an easy time with Edgar Chairez. Granted, that fight was a few years ago, and now he's jumping up. And like I think there's a real case to be made that Ulanbekov is like top 3 to 5 in the division. And I look at this fight and it's like, you know, Tagir is a bit hittable on the feet. So like maybe Carpenter could knock him out, but Tagir seems really durable. He's technically a lot better on the feet than Carpenter is. He's longer, he's taller. Obviously he's much more seasoned. So like, I think he's going to be way better on the feet, honestly, even though Carpenter has that. Plus it's flyweight. And then like, the grappling is where I think this fight's really going to be determined. And like, I think Carpenter could get takedowns if he wants them. The problem is I think Ulanbekov's literally the best counter grappler in the UFC. Him and one other guy in this card who we'll talk about. And I kind of, the way I view it is like any takedown Carpenter gets, he's probably going to end in a scramble that Ulanbekov ends up on top in a dominant position against him. And conversely, I think Ulanbekov can get him down more or less at will. So like, it's a huge step up in competition for Carpenter. He's fighting an elite fighter who's a way better grappler, in my opinion, and just way more tested. I don't really think Carpenter's got that much finishing upside here. And without that, I think Ulanbekov's going to dominate minutes. I think he should be about minus 400 here. So I played him pretty big. What do you think, Legs?
I think you hit a lot of the main points, and I think Tagir is probably one of the safer chalk spots on the card just because I do think he has the grappling edge. I think he has a striking edge. It is a massive step up again, like you had mentioned already. Like I just don't see a huge avenue for Carpenter. Yeah. You'd have to tell me. You'd have to tell me it'd be like a squeaky close grappling affair. But I just don't see him having a ton of top time success here. So
yeah, that's kind of my things. It's like I don't put finish like higher than like 10%, and with that being the case, it's just like I have a very hard time picturing like what other unless Tagir just goes like full retard and just like. Doesn't it just doesn't engage him like right. Really, but he's never done that, so I don't see why he would do that now. But yeah, moving on. Ricky Turcios, Bernardo Sopaj. This is a rebooking from about 2 months ago for I believe it was UFC Vegas 100. These guys were supposed to fight at current price Sopaj minus 360 to come back on Turcios plus 285. Any thoughts here, Legs?
It's another one where I'd say I think chalk is safe, but by no means would I have any interest in it. Like I think Sopaj on the feet is the harder hitter of the two. Volume's probably close-ish. And obviously in terms of the grappling, I mean, Ricky's just awful off his back. I mean, could Sopaj get takedowns here? Lane control for sure. Like I think Sopaj should be fine here. Should be a decent bounce back for him.
Yeah, the big issue for me, I was kind of interested in Turcios in the first booking, but like the big issue for me and the more I think about it is it's just like, you know, Turcios' path is always just out scrambling in volume. But you mentioned it. The hardware difference here is gigantic. Sopaj is a lot more durable. He's got much faster hands and he hits a lot harder. And Ricky is very easy to hit. And honestly, I don't think Ricky's that durable. You know, he's been fortunate that he hasn't fought that many hitters, but he's been hurt a bunch. And so I think he's going to have issues, even if he's out voluming and winning minutes on the feet. Is it like maybe Sopaj will overly engage the grappling and gas out again? I could see that, and I could see that as a path. But in that case, I'd rather just get on Ricky live, you know, than play it early when Sopaj is going to be fresh. And also, I kind of think Sopaj slowing as bad as he did in the first in his first fight. I mean, he was like 5 days notice for that fight with Oliveira.
I was going to say it was short notice, yeah.
Yeah, and it was I thought it was a pretty good debut until then. So yeah, I just think the hardware gap is too big here. Not that Ricky can't win, but again. I'd rather see what the pace is looking like and play Ricky live than go in pre and watch him eat like a bunch of howitzers that wobble him in the first round. So
on top of that, it's like, where are you putting Ricky's finishing upside here in this fight?
It's almost completely reliant on Sopaj like death gassing. Like that's the only, and even then, you know, until Oliveira hit that knee, he was kind of like hanging in there, like barely, but hanging in there. So yeah, I don't have any real interest in Ricky here. Moving on. This is an interesting fight, though. We got Rinya Nakamura taking on Muin Gafurov. I literally just finished taping this right before we got on here. Current price is Rinya minus 450. Come back on Gafurov plus 350. I have weird feelings about it because, like, I do think Rinya should be fine because I really don't like the way that Gafurov defends takedowns and how often he kind of just accepts getting pushed into guard. But I mean, Rinya is a great prospect. I think he's one of the better prospects in the sport, but the dude is super green, man. He's super easy to hit. I don't think he's got the best jiu-jitsu yet at this point in his career. And like Gafurov, when he's fresh, is like very physical. He's very dynamic and he's very physical. And so I'm not, even though I think Rinya will get takedowns early, I'm not 100% sure he's going to be able to control Gafurov early in this fight. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Rinya could knock Gafurov out because he hits really hard himself. But like on the feet, Gafurov is dangerous. You know, you do not want to be getting into a firefight with him. And that seems to be the way Rinya approaches stand-up. So I don't know. Like I haven't decided. I was thinking maybe we'll see what props say. Maybe like if the KO1 on Gafurov is big enough, like if I get like a plus 1,300, plus 1,400 on Gafurov KO1, I'd take a shot at it. Because I do think the later this fight goes, the more likely Rinya is to just start dominating. But I think Gafurov can get up early. And if he can get up, I think he's got a chance to land something big. But ultimately, I think Rinya deserves to be a big favorite. He is a much, much better wrestler, and he's a much better athlete. What do you think, Lags? What's going on, Glenn?
To me, I think that's where it comes down to is the wrestling. And I think that's all really Rinya needs here. I think he's a much better wrestler of the two. I think he is the deserving big chalk favorite here. I think he can probably find a submission finish late in the fight. But similar to the Sopaj fight, like it's just chalk that I have no interest in where he's sitting.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Moving on, we got Carol Rosa taking on Aline Perez. Current price, Rosa minus 180. The comeback on Perez plus 155. What are your thoughts here, Lags? Are you gonna fade Perez here?
I would, but again, it's Rosa at chalk is another one that's like, to me, it's another tough one. Like I think the line's probably fine. Maybe there's a little bit of meat on the bone at Rosa money line because I think she can stuff most of the takedowns from Perez, and her striking is awful. Like Rosa's going to dominate on the feet here, but there's just not a ton of margin usually in Rosa fights in general. Like I expect this to be pretty close down the stretch. Like what I expect her like I don't see Rosa dominating this fight to the tune of minus 250-ish by any means.
Yeah, that's kind of my issue too. I mean, I could see it, I guess, because I do think in watching Perez's tape, like a lot of her wrestling is just brute physicality, and I think Rosa even as a grappler is a much more technical grappler than Perez is. Having said that, my big concern with Rosa is just, when she has ended up on her back, she has looked dire. She just looks awful down there. She can't get off her back. It's terrible. So, and against someone like Perez, who is going to come out like a bull in a china shop and try to take you down, that's kind of scary that you could be in a kind of situation where 2 takedowns is the fight. I know Edwards reversed Perez a fair bit last fight, so there's probably some equity for Rosa to scramble with her a bit because I don't think Perez is that good a grappler. It's just that downside makes her floor so low that it's really hard to like bet juice on it.
I agree.
What I do have some interest in, I saw the over was like minus 500, the over 2.5.
Really?
And I kind of think like if Perez like slows down, Rosa hits hard and she's a pretty good submission grappler. Like if Rosa gets on top of a tired Aline Perez, she could definitely submit her. So I'm kind of interested in maybe poking the under small and or taking like Rosa sub 2, Rosa sub 3, and just banking. I almost think that's like, I don't want to say it's a better way to play it, but I think you capture a lot of Perez's downside, by betting it that way instead of like trusting chalk to not get stuck on their back. So I don't know. Rosa's better. She should win this fight. I don't have any interest in the money line price, but we'll see what the props say. I am kind of interested in playing like some Rosa late stuff though. Moving on, we have Grant Dawson taking on Carlos Diego Ferreira. Current price, Grant Dawson minus 260. Come back on Ferreira plus 200. Grant Dawson's my boy, man. I've bet him in almost every fight. I don't think I've ever bet against him. I did bet against him today, though. I actually placed a bet on CDF at plus 265 this morning for a unit and a half. Honestly, if CDF wasn't 39 years old, I'd be betting him a lot bigger at like any other point in his career. But obviously, he is old, and Dawson is very, very physical. My thing is, it's like, I don't want to say it's a carbon copy of the Rebecca fight. Like, there are some crucial differences on both sides. First being, Rebecca is much more dangerous on the feet than Dawson is, just a lot more firepower. But the other side of that is Dawson's a much better grappler than Rebecca, especially from top position. So the thing is, the reason I bet him against Rebecca is the same reason I'm basically betting him here. And it's Carlos Diego Ferreira is one of the hardest guys to hold down in the history of the sport. He beat Rustam Habilov, who's a great wrestler, couldn't hold him down. He was whooping Gregor Gillespie's ass for the first 7 minutes of that fight. And Gregor just kept coming, though, because he's a junkyard dog, and eventually pushed a heavy enough pace that Diego broke, and he finished him. He was starting to take over against Mateusz Gamrot, who took him down 4 or 5 times and just couldn't hold him there. And then he got injured. So I look at this, and it's like, yeah, Dawson, he might have better top control than a lot of those guys. I don't think he's a better grappler than Gregor is, though. Now, granted, that fight was like 3 or 4 years ago now. So, I mean, obviously, Carlos is a bit on the older side himself. But I do think Carlos is going to be able to scramble with him early in this fight and work up. And maybe even all fight, depending on how much Dawson can force it. And, I mean, on the feet, CDF is a lot better than Dawson. Come forward pressure, much better boxer, heavier hands, much better defensively. Dawson is tragic standing. So... And I can't get that Jared Gordon fight out of my head. I bet Dawson there, but Gordon is a guy who, I love Jared Gordon. He's a very well-rounded blue collar fighter, but he is a guy who great grapplers should hammer. And he made that fight really close. And I think Ferreira can duplicate a lot of that and probably not get stuck in a body triangle in the way Gordon kept getting stuck. My biggest concern is just Dawson's physicality, youth, and cardio maybe eventually break CDF. But CDF historically has had great cardio outside of the Gregor fight. Maybe Dawson can duplicate it, but I'm skeptical. I'm happy to make Dawson a small favorite off his age and his physicality, but I mean, given the striking differential and given how good a scrambler and counter grappler CDF is, I just cannot see how Dawson's -260 here. What do you think?
I see where you're coming from, and I can only really bet CDF in this spot, but I think Dawson's top game is very elite, to your point that you had mentioned. Obviously, I think it's much better than Gamrot's. I think it's
great.
Yeah. So, I think he can definitely, perform his line here, right? Because that's the thing. I was going through a lot of his old fights. It's he's usually a huge chalked up favorite, and when is he really ever covering that? Maybe against Garcia in his last fight?
Selecki, he pounded.
True. He was stuck in a deep submission early in that fight, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love Grant Dawson, but I think outside of the top 3 or 4 guys in the division, this is probably his hardest matchup stylistically, Carlos de Ferreira, But yeah, we'll see what happens. I played CDF small. Moving on, though, we have, I was about to say another compelling fight. This one's not that compelling. We have Zachary Reese taking on Cedricus Dumas. It could be Cedricus Dumas. Current price, Reese -260 to come back on Dumas +220. What do you think here, Legs?
Honestly, I think if the under holds, I have some interest there. Under 1.5 at pick'em. I think it's going to be a pretty much a car crash as long as this fight lasts. I mean, I think there is some equity to Dumas landing takedowns here against Reese, but I think on the feet, both of these guys have no defense. Both these guys have decent power in their own right. So I think under 1.5 at pretty much pick'em isn't awful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been very low on Zachary Reese, in general. Obviously, I bet Brundage against him in his first fight. I've been very vocal that I don't think he belongs in the UFC. What I will say about Zachary Reese, though, is I was I know that guy Medina he fought is the worst fighter on the roster, but I was kind of impressed that he never slowed down in that fight. The pace of that fight was insane, and he just kept coming deep into it, which actually impressed me. The other side of that is all the holes that I think are in his game, both as a defensive wrestler and defensively, are still very, very, very apparent. The issue for me is, though, which is so why wouldn't you bet Dumas? Dude, Cedricus Dumas is so fucking bad, man. This guy is what is he good at? Tell me, What is he good at? I don't know. And I feel I mean, look, there's a lot of truth to the fact that in the aggregate, the African Americans tend to be better athletes than white guys. But I feel a lot of Cedricus Dumas and people I've heard so many people he's a freak athlete, and I watch him fight, and I'm is he? Is it just because he's black? I feel that's why people are saying he's a great athlete. He moves, he's slow, he's goofy, he's easy to hit.
Jacoby Smith is a freak athlete.
Yes, Jacoby Smith is a freak athlete. That is exactly right. Do you know what I'm saying though? Am I wrong about that?
No. You're not wrong at all. Honestly, to me, these guys, it's almost a fairly mirror matchup.
I think Reese is a bit more aggro than Dumas is, and I think he's less of a quitter than Dumas is. Reese seems like he's a bit of a dog,
And that's why I think there's a lot of credence to the under here. Like, to me, if Reese lands a couple hard shots early here, like, I don't think Dumas is going to just, like, fight through the fire. Like, this, to me, this seems like almost like a Marquez kind of spot.
Yeah, I kind of agree as well. Like, that's why I'm not betting Dumas. Like, I just feel like you know what's funny? He seems to me like the most obvious big dog of the week that people are going to want to target because it's Zachary Reese at, like, big chalk. But I kind of have a feeling Reese is just going to run through him, to be honest, because like I said, Dumas is the kind of guy, the moment he faces adversity, he just crumbles instantly. The only reason he didn't crumble against Cody Brundage is because Cody Brundage is the epitome of a guy who crumbles every time he faces adversity, you know?
Yes.
So I have no interest in this fight. The under is maybe not a bad shout. I just, like, I taped it and, like, I wanted to get to a Dumas bet, but I'm like, taping, I'm saying, I can't. At least Reese is a bit explosive. Like, I don't think Dumas is even that. So, yeah, it's a pass for me. Moving on, we got Jailton Almeida taking on Sergey Spivac. Almeida coming off his first UFC loss to Curtis Blades. I don't think he's fought since then, right? Oh, did he fight Romanov since then?
Yeah. I was going to say that was the last fight, yeah.
So, Almeida minus 420. Comeback on Spivac plus 320. I'm a bit pissed here because I should have taped it earlier because, like, I saw minus 300 last week and I was like, I really think it should be a lot wider than that. And then I taped it this weekend and I think it should be I think it should be wider than where it is now. I don't really want to lay minus 400, but
you could look at the total.
I am looking at the total. We got to see, like, when limits open up a little bit on it, but I saw it opened at, like, minus 175 to the under 1.5. It got bet to plus 125. Yeah. I really like the under 1.5 or plus money here. Like, I'm not going to give a big technical breakdown of this fight. Jailton Almeida is going to fucking hammer Sergey Spivac. That is what's going to happen. He is going to take him down in the first 30 seconds of this fight and maul him. I am, like, pretty confident about that. Maybe Spivac doesn't get subbed and he kind of hangs on, but I think Almeida should be, like, honestly almost 90% in this fight, in my opinion. I think he runs over Spivac. I don't think Spivac has the athleticism, the toughness, the grit, or the jiu-jitsu to deal with Almeida. What do you think?
Agreed, and I think this is depending on what the price, if we go back to it, Jailton KO.
That's an interesting one, too. Yeah, because the sub is going to be egregious, I'm sure. You'll probably be like a plus 120 or something. You know, it's not going to be great. Hopefully, if we could get like a 400 or 500 on the KO, that would be nice.
So I think that KO1 would be good look. Any under 1.5, I like all that.
The under 1.5 is very intriguing to me. But I'm curious. I'll throw it to your way here because one of the guys in this next fight, you and I both bet the last time he was a plus 700 underdog. We got Peyton Talbott. He is currently minus 1,200. He is taking on Raoni Barcelos at plus 750. Will you be going back to the well on Raoni?
No, I won't be. But there's definitely credence for him here in this spot because, like, Nick Aguirre won a round off Peyton Talbott in grappling. So, like, again, there's totally equity here for Raoni to do that as well, get some grappling going here. But to me, he just looks very old. He is old, looks very slow. I mean, I think this is just Peyton catching him at the right time. I think this is probably like a late Peyton finish. But again, it wouldn't shock me if he finishes him early. He's just going to be much faster than Raoni.
I'm going to probably put like 0.2 or 0.3 units on Raoni, like something really tiny on it, just because I do feel like there's just so much potential downside at this price to Talbott. Like, Talbott, I've kind of come around him as a prospect. Obviously, insane output, insane cardio, huge for the division, seems to be durable, and he hits very hard. But despite all of that, which are great attributes, especially at his age, the guy is very vulnerable, you know, just about everywhere. To wrestling, to jiu-jitsu, to boxing. He's very, very easy to kind of get offense off on in all realms. The problem is he just tends to out-offense you. But he hasn't really fought somebody, or I shouldn't even say really, he has not fought somebody as offensively gifted as Raoni Barcelos yet in his career. Now, to your point, I agree with you. He is catching Barcelos at the right time. He is way past the peak of his career. But, you know, Raoni, he still throws pretty hard for a bantamweight. And obviously, he's got a pretty serious wrestling and jiu-jitsu background. He's fought a way better level of competition. Now, I think Peyton Talbott's going to run over him. But, like, if he comes out there and fucking body triangles Peyton Talbott like a minute into the fight and submits him, like, I'll fucking vomit if I don't have money on that side of it. And it's also like, you know, Talbott's just the way he fights. I know he's durable, but when you're that easy to hit and you're fighting a guy with some pop, it's very hard to be this price, especially when you're giving away a grappling disadvantage too. Like, I don't really want to make a point of fading Peyton Talbott until he's fighting really top tier fighters anymore. But I do think the guy like Barcelos, especially with the grappling equity, after, to your point, I mean, the Nick Aguirre thing is probably the biggest thing for me. It's like, dude, Leone Barcelos, even today, would be minus 500 against Nick Aguirre. He absolutely molested him. And Nick Aguirre took a round off Peyton Talbott. Like, that worries me. Because, or I shouldn't say worries me, but that I'm like, if that happened, how can I not take, like, I have to have some money on Leone Barcelos here.
Right, because then again, he only needs to win like another round or two if you win that first round. So, big plus 700. Can't hate it.
Like, Barcelos isn't a bitch, Like, Victor Henry, like, took the fucking pace to him. And obviously Talbot hits harder than Henry. But, like, Barcelos isn't going to back off or break. He might get knocked out, but he's not going to crack, So, yeah, I'll have a tiny, tiny wager on Barcelos for shits and giggles. But, I think Talbot's going to crush him, personally. Moving on, the fight that we were going to talk about, Bogdan Guskov taking on Billy Elekana. Guskov minus 300, comeback on Elekana plus 250. I understand why the line is where it is, because the fight was booked last night. Elekana obviously hasn't been fighting the highest level of competition. And, Guskov's been in the UFC. He was training for a fight with Johnny Walker. But guys, Bogdan Guskov is fucking bad, man. I was arguing with somebody last night who was telling me that, like, he looked great in his last fight. And I was like, Ryan Spann fucking 10-8'd him in round 1 and gassed out. Like, that, did he look great? Did he look great, or did Ryan Spann do Ryan Spann things, Like, I have not seen Bogdan Guskov look great against anybody in any organization ever.
Yeah.
Like, he hits hard. He does hit hard. But he's very, very easy to hit. He's a poor wrestler. He's got poor jiu-jitsu. I do not think
pretty bad cardio, too.
Yes! I was going to bet Walker, honestly. Like, and I know all these reasons
that would have been so much. That would have been so much of a better fight. I was hoping we were going to get that, but
yeah. And I was like looking at it, and I'm like, dude, everybody's getting behind Bogdan Guskov, and he's giving away like 7 inches in reach to like a fast giant like Johnny Walker. Like, I know Walker's fragile, but like skill for skill, the fight was not competitive. But now he's got Billy Elekana, and like I've always been kind of high on Billy. Like, he's not great, but he's very, very well rounded. He's a solid grappler. He's a good kicker. He's got a decent jab. Obviously, this is a tremendously large step up in competition for him. And so, like, I kind of expect Guskov to win. I think that's reasonable. But I will say, like, Billy's a good enough grappler. If Billy was more of a proactive wrestler than he is, I would bet him here. The thing is, he tends to reinitiate grappling when guys try to grapple him. And, like, Guskov's not going to try to grapple him. If you told me he came out shooting, I would take him here because I think he's a much better grappler than Guskov is. He might even be a better striker than Guskov is. Like, I don't think that Billy Elekana is much better than Zach Pauga, or much worse than Zach Pauga. And Pauga was a favorite in that fight. So, I don't know. Like, I'm probably not going to play it. I don't want to bet. Like, I hate betting debutantes. And it's such a bad circumstance, them coming in on short notice and taking on a hitter like Guskov. But I will say, I think Elekana is reasonably live here if he takes the right path. What do you think, Legs?
I think Elekana is pretty shit, quite francly. Like, going through his tape, like I don't. To your point, like, I think grappling is his best path and pretty much his best asset. I don't think he's a great grappler by any means. It's a shit fight. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think either of these guys are very skilled and are long for the UFC. But I think Guskov more often than not can land the harder shots here. Can probably find a finish. Like, I don't see much of a threat from Elekana standing.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think he can really hurt Guskov, which is kind of the problem, and that's kind of my problem with it too. He needs to. He's a former middleweight. He needs to grapple really, and he probably won't.
Yeah.
Moving on though, we have Big Mouth Kevin Holland taking on Rene de Ridder. Current price, the line movement has been all towards de Ridder this week, and we are all the way down to de Ridder minus 115, Holland minus 105. It looks like Kevin Holland is gonna flip dog here. Does that intrigue you, Legs? Like, any thoughts?
It does intrigue me, but. So first, Kevin Holland's never won a middleweight fight where guys trying to grapple him. For starters, I don't think him fighting at middleweight's great. I think I'd rather have him at 170. Much better suits him. On the other side, though, I don't think de Ridder's great at all. Like, guy's a decent wrestler, but he's pretty gassy. I think he's pretty fragile. Not a great striker. Like, I think Holland can definitely like work him on the feet. Can definitely find a finish in this fight, but obviously the takedowns worry me a ton.
I'm going to probably play Holland for a decent amount, honestly. I know all the reasons not to do it. And don't forget,
Right.
we were fading Kevin Holland before it was popular to fade Kevin Holland against grapplers.
Yes.
But this isn't fucking Derek Brunson. This isn't Roman DeLeeds. Like, it's not, Kevin Holland, yes, he's got his issues. And, like, if DeRitter gets him down, he can probably control him. Although I'll say this, the way GM3 was, like, initiating scrambles against DeRitter, I don't see why Holland can't do that as well. Like, he's done that in the past against, like, less good grapplers. Like, DeLeeds isn't a great grappler, but he's at least heavy on top, I don't get the sense that DeRitter is particularly heavy on top. He actually seems pretty loosey-goosey and, like, pretty, I don't want to say easy to reverse. He's obviously a talented submission grappler, but he seems much more submission over position. And, like, I don't want to say he's not live to sub Holland. He definitely is. I don't think he's super likely to sub Holland, though. So, like, I think he's a bad wrestler. I think there's the possibility that Holland could work up off takedowns. On the feet, the gap is gigantic. Like, Holland is so much faster. He hits so much harder. He's so much more durable. On top of which, dude, I like watch DeRitter, and I'm like, this guy, he seems like an absolute wilter to me. Honestly, like, you look at something like the last fight that he lost, and he basically ate 2 hard shots and just checked out, refused to engage, stood against the fence, and got picked apart. Even the GM3 fight, he was fucking breaking hard in that fight, and Gerald was completely gassed out. If Gerald wasn't gassed out, he probably would have won.
Yeah, I mean, that was a close fight.
Yeah, it was a very close fight. And Gerald is ancient, man. He is ancient. He is slow.
That was a setup spot for him.
Yes, it was literally supposed to.
It didn't look like it.
No. Yeah. And now they're giving him Kevin Holland, and, like, yeah, Holland's bad off his back. But, like, Kevin Holland scrambled competitively with Brendan Allen. He actually scrambled competitively with Gerald Meerschaert back in the day. I don't think Kevin Holland's takedown defense is as bad as it used to be. Like, he can be taken down, but, like, usually by wrestlers, and usually you can't just be, it's got to be, like, you can't just be linear going at him. You've got to, like, set it up. And I don't really think DeRitter can do that. And at the end of the day, I just think Holland's got way, way more finishing upside. And I think DeRitter, if he's coming out shooting a million takedowns, I think he's going to slow. And I think if he slows, he's going to die. Like, I don't make Holland like a huge favorite, but I think like minus 140, minus 150 makes sense. He has so much more moment upside and so much more finishing upside, in my opinion. It's like, I have a hard time believing Rene DeRitter is like super likely to pull a Derek Brunson here, and like come out there and just blanket him for 15. I have a hard time seeing it. So I haven't bet it yet. Yeah.
The only other thing I was going to add, and with the line move now, him going to dog, I'd be curious to see what the no scorecard line looks like for Holland too when that opens up.
I mean, I have to imagine. I have to imagine he's going to be favored to finish. Like, I cannot imagine they favored DeRitter to finish the fight. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, who knows? DeRitter's going to flip favorite here. So, I mean, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'll be on Holland. It's never fun to bet having Kevin Holland against the grappler, but it's got to be done, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Moving on. This is a banger fight, and this is my biggest. Well, it's going to be tied for my biggest bet on the card with Tagir. But we got Renato Moicano taking on Beneil Dariush. Current price, Moicano minus 185. Comeback on Dariush plus 160. At the moment, I have 4 units on Dariush at an average like plus 178. I'm probably going to add one more on it. I'll just give you guys my thoughts first from a market standpoint, and then a fight standpoint, and why I like the Dariush side. Basically think this line should be completely reversed. All right, market-wise, couple fights back, Beneil Dariush is a favorite against Charles Oliveira 2 fights ago. All of MMA Twitter betting Beneil Dariush. I didn't bet him for what it's worth, but I bet Charles there.
I didn't either.
But
I didn't bet anybody.
Yeah, but everybody, how many people do we know that bet Dariush in that fight?
Oh, I know.
He gets knocked out by Oliveira in the first round of that fight. Then he fights Arman Tsarukyan, also fighting for the title this weekend. Gets knocked out in the first round. Okay. 3 fights ago, Renato Moicano comes in against Drew Dober as a minus 190 favorite. Nearly was a minute from losing that fight, or a minute and a half from losing that fight, until Drew Dober went for a lateral drop, and Moicano ended up on top of him and rode out round 3 to win the fight. Next fight, he comes in and he's fighting. Who did he fight 2 fights ago? Jalen Turner. And he's a plus 200 underdog. Nearly gets finished in the first round, and then manages to get Turner down and work him from top position. It was an impressive performance, but again, huge dog. Next fight after that, last fight, Dumas Saint Denis. He comes in as a plus 230 underdog. And, he worked St. Denis in the first round. Second round, he kind of looked like things might get sketchy, but Denis' eye was so fucked up, they stopped the fight. But so he's been a huge dog in 2 straight fights now. And now he's fighting a guy who 2 fights ago was a favorite against Charles Oliveira, and Renato Moicano is nearly a minus 200 favorite. That is absolutely absurd. Then, you back up and you look at it from, a skill to skill perspective, and it's like, I think you'd probably agree with me that both of their biggest liabilities is the chin, right? Both Moicano and Dariush. Yeah. And of the two, in my opinion, Moicano might be a slicker striker, but he's not. I don't think he's a more effective striker than Dariush. And of the two, Benny actually has real power and throws with intent, and Renato just doesn't have that much power. I mean, maybe Dariush's chin is at the point where it can get cracked by a stiff wind, but people were saying about Moicano like a year ago. So, neither have good chins, but one of them hits really hard and the other one doesn't, and that's Dariush. In the grappling, both guys can get takedowns. I suppose Moicano could get a back take on Dariush. He got subbed way back in the day by Chiesa, but Dariush historically, his scrambling is elite. Gamrot couldn't consolidate takedowns against him at all. Almost no one really has ever been able to. Conversely, Moicano, when you put this guy on the mat, he's not great off his back at all. I mean, you saw the RDA fight a couple years ago where he just got absolutely mauled. You saw Drew Dober get on top of him and hold him down a couple fights ago, Drew Dober. And now he's fighting Beneil, who is a very good grappler. And, Moicano's preferred way to get fights to the mat is via the clinch. Well, that's also Beneil's preferred way to do it. And Beneil is way stronger than him. Beneil is a natural lightweight who could probably fight at welterweight. Moicano's a former featherweight. I just feel like when they tie up, Beneil's going to be so much stronger. And so, I look at the fight and I'm like, I know Moicano's on a run here. He's popular. Money Moicano. He gives great post-fight interviews and everything. But, they have commensurate durability. Neither is durable. Benny hits way, way harder. He throws similar output. Of the two, he's far more likely to get on top and hold the other one down than Moicano is. He's fought the higher level of competition, and yet he's an underdog here. I think the line should be. I literally think the line should be flipped here. I'm sending it on Benny really big. What do you think?
I bet Benny earlier today plus 170 per unit. To be honest with you, well, for starters, you know who was everybody's baby before a 2-fight losing streak here? BSD. Everybody said BSD was coming for the title, and now what? Everybody's kind of throwing him in the trash. Oh, he's not great, not great. I bet Benny against Gamrot too, plus 170 there. Again, I love all your points you made in this fight. To me, on the feet, again, durability-wise, edge Benny, power edge, obviously Benny as well. I don't think Moicano is likely to hold him down for big stretches, and that's honestly probably the biggest worry in the fight, because I think a lot of people will point to the chin for Benny, but I just don't see it. I think it's commensurate chin. So to me, this line, if it was plus 125 Benny, I wouldn't have a ton of interest. And I guess, to your point, you would have it be flipped, maybe minus 125, minus 150 Benny. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think plus 170 is a gift, personally. I think it seems crazy. Yes. And I'll probably add a little bit as well.
Me too. So
I like the under 2, though. Under 2.5.
I actually like that, too, and I think that kind of covers some bases on the Dariush side. Because I'd be shocked if he lost the decision to Moicano. I don't think it's not impossible, but I favor him a decent amount in decision if it goes to distance, So
no, agreed.
Moving on, though, we have a fucking banger fight. This really should be headlining a fight night. We had Jiri Prochazka taking on Jamal Hill. It feels disrespectful that it's a 3-round fight. Current price, Hill minus 116. The comeback on Prochazka minus 104. Thoughts here, Legs?
I'll be honest, I don't think I want much interest in the fight. I think it's just going to be pretty volatile fight in general. But I do think that the volume of Jiri can definitely overwhelm Jamal. I just think it's going to be a chaotic fight, as most Jiri fights are. And Jiri has the finishing upside, in my opinion. I think when you talk about durability, I think it's probably commensurate. I don't think – I mean, Jiri doesn't have a great chin by any means, but I don't think Jamal does either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I lean Jiri, but definitely no interest in betting now.
Yeah, I thought I'd be betting Hill big, to be honest, pre-tape. And then after I taped it, I think it's a pretty good matchup for Jiri. I don't know if I'll bet him or not. I might not, because it is. I do worry how void defensively Jury is. Like Hill is going to hit him with a bunch of 1-2s in this fight clean. So it does make me concerned. But like initially I was like, yeah, Hill's got better cardio. He's got better pace. You know, he should be able to get off all his strikes. But like when taping it, I feel like Hill is pretty vulnerable defensively himself. And, you know, the big thing that really kind of can neutralize Jiri are calf kicks. And, you know, it's opposite stances here. Hill's not a great kicker to begin with. Calf kicks probably won't be that big of an issue. And it's like, to your point, I look at it and I think like Jiri against the southpaw where he doesn't have to worry about calf kicks, there's a decent chance he's just going to drown him in volume, you know? And on top of which, I also think Jiri does a bit of a better job with his shot selection, and he throws with a lot more intent and looks to land critical shots more than Hill does. Like Hill's kind of, you know, I know he's got a bunch of knockouts, but like, let's be honest, he's kind of a point striker for the most part. Like I'm like, not that he's a light hitter, but you know what I mean? It's like jab, jab too. Like he's not really looking to like land damage in the same way Jiri is. And so I look at it and I'm like, I feel Jiri's got a bit more finishing upside here. Maybe Hill's more durable, but without the calf kicks in his back pocket, without grappling ability in his back pocket, I don't really want to bet a jab merchant and pick him against the guy, you know, who's as violent as Jiri is. I don't really want to bet Jiri either, but I can't lay juice on the Jamal Hill side here. I guess my pick's going to be Jiri. I don't feel super strong about it. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm saying all of this about Jiri, but like, I think Jamal Hill can obviously win this fight. You know, he is a good boxer and he is very precise. And I do think he is going to land on Jiri a lot in this fight. I don't see what tools he possesses that are going to neutralize Jiri's game. And if I can't see that, I don't really have any interest in betting him and pick him. It just feels like it's going to be a barn burner of a fight. And I don't really have a strong feeling in a barn burner between these two.
Yep.
Moving on, though, we have got the co-main event. Merab, the Machine, Dvalishvili, the current bantamweight champion, who we were able to bet as an underdog against Sean O'Malley in his last fight. Well, we get to bet him as an underdog again here. He's taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. Current price, brother Umar minus 350. The comeback on Merab plus 275. I could make a 20-minute impassioned speech here about how retarded this is, but if you don't know how this line's retarded, I don't know what to tell you. Like it's really, I don't, you know, I was funny. I was texting Magambus yesterday, and I was like, dude, the line is like implying Umar is the best bantamweight ever, and he was like, you know what, though, dude, he could be the best bantamweight ever, and the line would still be wide. And it's like that's true because, like, dude, Merab, we talk about it every time he fights. The guy fights at a pace that's heretofore unseen in the history of professional mixed martial arts. No one in any division has matched it. High pace on the feet, insane number of takedowns, cuts off the cage very, very well, is very durable, and has limitless cardio. It's very, very hard to be this big of an underdog with that kind of pace ever. The biggest case that I can make here for Umar at being a big favorite is maybe Umar, if he gets his own takedowns, can get a body triangle in. That's possible. And I think that would be, you know, the case for him, like being a big favorite. But I'd be a little surprised, man. He had a really hard time getting it in against Sandhagen. And I still don't think Corey's defensive jiu-jitsu is all that good. And like on the feet, yeah, Umar is the better technical striker, but like so is Sean O'Malley, you know? There's a lot of, so is Peter Yan. It's like, how many times do we have to see Merab come out there and just pump these guys at pace where the striking doesn't even matter? Like Umar wants to finesse it. I kind of think a lot of people see him and see the name. And now don't get me wrong. Let me preface this by saying Umar is elite. He has an elite skill set. I'm not saying he doesn't, but there's a huge difference between how he fights and how Usman Nurmagomedov fights and how like Islam and Habib fight. Like the physicality of Islam and Habib is just on a totally different level than the physicality of like Umar or Usman. Like Umar's not that physical, and I don't think he hits that hard. So he's very reliant on point fighting you and then taking you down if you get too close. But like and most guys he fights are afraid of the takedowns. I don't think Merab's going to be afraid of takedowns. I think he is going to come marauding forward here like he always does. He's going to probably try to get his own takedowns. Maybe Umar snatches a sub or knocks him out, but I don't think Umar is going to be getting far ahead, if at all, on minutes here. So yeah, I mean, I have the much more tested guy, the much more experienced fighter who has literally dominated every single fighter he has fought in the UFC since his second fight. A list that includes multiple former champions who he has run through. Henry Cejudo, who has never gassed his career, broke him in a 3-round fight. Peter Yan broke him in, over a 5-round fight. Sean O'Malley broke him. Like, these are not, like, Umar's great.
Not to mention, and not to interrupt there, and on top of that, the Peter Yan fight, 5-round fight, probably one of the best 5-round performances.
Probably the best,
I would say.
Yeah, yes.
Unbelievable.
So it's like you're betting on, like, you can make a real argument right now that Merab Dvalishvili is the best bantamweight ever. And you're getting to bet on this guy who has an unparalleled skill set in the middle of his prime against a guy who has beaten Nate Manas and Corey Sandhagen. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, the Sandhagen performance was impressive, but, like, let's be honest, it was nowhere near as dominant as what we've seen Merab do to better fighters than Corey Sandhagen. So, yeah, I think the price is crazy. Am I saying Merab should be a favorite? I don't know. Like, I really, really like Umar's game. But I do think this price is insane, and I'll have a couple units on Merab by fight time. What do you think?
I'm also betting Merab as well at plus 265, plus 270. Like, I'm not going to really echo a ton of the same points because I think we're on the same wavelength here. But to me, I don't see Umar holding Merab down a ton. And that, to me, is really the crux of the fight. Sure, Umar's got great kicks on the feet, and I would be worried about maybe a high kick. Merab's not, great defensively on the feet, but the cardio and the pace are just too much to ignore at this kind of a price tag. In a 5-round fight, it's like, also to me, look at the bantamweights coming up in the rankings. Yes. Do any of these guys pose any kind of a threat to Umar in the near future? No. Like, I think this is the time to buy the stocks on Merab, fade Umar. I get it. I get people want to buy into the name. I get it. I just don't see where he covers this line.
No, I mean, dude, Merab is like, so that's the thing. The one, and yes, EN Sunday is the new day for the show. Yes. I like the one argument you can make, and we were having this conversation in our group chat earlier today, is like, maybe it turns out Merab's got bad defensive jiu-jitsu. It would surprise me greatly based on what I've seen from his get-ups, and also based on the fact that this dude trained in Matt Serra's gym for 8 years with Aljo as his main training partner. Like, if it turns out Merab is just a fish at jiu-jitsu, I'd be shocked. It could happen, though. It could happen. Like, we haven't really seen it, but it could happen.
And not to MMA math it by any means, but, like, look at the Aljo fight versus Corey. Aljo, massive BJJ edge, able to finish the fight pretty early. Now, if we're
ran through him,
right. Now, if we're assuming Umar's this great talent, this and that, I don't think he's got an elite BJJ by any means. I mean, look at the fight versus Corey. Look at all these fights. Like,
he doesn't.
Great grappling.
I mean, the thing is, look at even his career. I mean, honestly, and I'm not trying to, like, poo-poo Umar. As I've said over and over, I could not be less high on him. He is extremely good. But it's like the Corey fight was an extremely impressive performance. I was impressed with it. But other than that, it's like he beat that Bezcat guy in his UFC debut in a fight where he got dropped, by the way. Yeah. He knocked out Heoni Barcelos in the first round. Good win, but Heoni's old and not much was happening in that fight. Nate Manas, Brian Kelleher, Sergey Morozov. Those are the rest. And the only other decent guy he's fought was Saidikov Kakramanov in PFL. And that was a 50-50 fight. If you watch that fight, that is literally a 50-50 fight that he got in with Saidikov. Now, that fight was years ago, but point being, even the Sandhagen fight, I'm not sure he looked minus 350 in that fight. Like, How are we getting Merab? How is he being priced against Merab the same price he was against Corey Sandhagen? Like, how is that? How is that happening? Like, I think Merab, you'd make him like minus 300 against Corey, right? Around there, I think.
Yeah. And my other thing is too, like, I get, like, people want to crown, like, Umar, like, this new future champion, but, like, to me, like, he'd be a very boring champion in comparison to, like, Merab. Like, Merab has an actually, like, I get it, it's a boring-ish style, but, like, how he does that style is not boring at all.
I am hoping he is not boring. I am hoping we get some, like, plus 6,000, plus 7,000, like, late round props on the Merab KO. It never cashes, but I mean, he's never had to fight at the pace he's going to have to fight in this fight. And if he can't control Merab, he's probably going to be in deep shit down the stretch of this fight, So I'm hoping that'll happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, even on top of that, too, I'd be curious to see what FanDuel opens the 4-5 decision at. If we get, like, maybe a 6-1.
600, yeah. That would be pretty good. I'd be interested in that. I would be very interested in that.
Yep.
But yeah, we're gonna both be on Merab. We're gonna ride our boy one more time. Well, if he wins this fight, we're gonna probably ride him more than one more time. But yeah. Moving on. We got the main event. We got Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan. It's their second meeting. First one was in Arman's debut in the UFC. It was a fight of the night. Arman was a huge favorite. And we're going running it back here. Or Islam was a huge favorite. But it was a great fight. It was a very fun fight, even though Islam won it pretty firmly. And current price here, Islam minus 410. The comeback on Arman plus 310. What's your view here, Lags? Like, do you I think we both probably feel the numbers a little wide, but like, do you have much interest in playing it?
I don't, and I think a lot of people would, expect here on our co-main event breakdowns would expect us to have some kind of interest in the dog. And don't get me wrong, I guess that's probably the only way I would really look, either that or maybe a Islam decision, just because I don't think Arman's very likely to get finished. It's just too tough to ignore Islam's skill set, like we had mentioned previously in this pod. Like he's got great striking, minimizes exchanges, very physical, great grappler. I mean, what is there to say? Like one of the best fighters in the world. So, I
probably
think
the best. It's like him or Merab, honestly. That's it.
So no, I think Islam probably handles business here, but en route to a decision. I don't think there's much finishing equity here.
We appreciate.
I shouldn't say much finishing equity, but I should say I would be pretty surprised if Islam finished the fight early. I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I do intuitively think the price is wide, but my issue is, and you hit on a bunch of this, it's like I think the most underrated aspect of Islam's game is his striking. Like this is a guy who outstruck Alexander Volkanovski twice, basically, and
also one of the pound for pound fighters in the world.
Yeah, who's an elite striker and outstruck Dustin Poirier in his last fight. No one has really outstruck Islam ever in his career. On top of which, he's the most punishing grappler in the UFC, who also has good jiu-jitsu and good submission grappling. Now, I mean, I don't think he can ragdoll Arman. I don't. Arman is a physical freak who is on. The dude's a fucking silverback, man. The guy is on all kinds of chemicals, is all I'll say.
They both are. But yeah.
But Arman is, I think Arman's quite a bit more explosive than Islam is. But my issue is, so when I'm trying to think about the fight, though, I think Arman's two best paths are either kind of exploding Islam early and just catching him on the feet and putting him out, or alternatively making it a really grimy fight where there's a lot of clinching and there's not much striking exchanges and maybe he wins a couple rounds on optics. And I could see that. I could see that happening. I don't think Arman's not a bitch and he's really strong. And he's the rare guy who Islam's not going to be able to just bully in the clinch because he'll be able to fight back from those positions and reverse them himself.
He can match the physicality.
Yeah. And which almost no one else can do. My issue is on the feet, it's I kind of think Islam's such a good striker that after the first couple minutes, he's going to get a beat on him. And there's just so much more depth to his striking than there is Arman's. It's I think he'll be fine there. And in the grappling, that could happen. But I still think even though Arman is a very gifted grappler and is very strong, I don't really think he's going to be able to get Islam down much. And if he does, I don't think he's going to keep him down. Whereas I do think Islam is going to, at points, be able to get Arman down in this fight. Will he keep him down? Probably not. But I think Islam's got the upside of getting a body triangle in, and winning a round or two off that or submitting him. Whereas I don't really see any submission upside for Arman in this fight. I see very little top control upside for him. The upside I see is either a knockout or him being able to make it a very clinchy fight that's very, very close. Now, that might be it. That might be enough given Arman's skill set at this price, plus Islam's kind of getting a bit older. So maybe that's enough, but I don't really, it's not enough for me to want to get involved. I'm also a fan of Islam. So it's as a fighter, I think he is the best fighter on the planet. And so again, it's I don't really want to fade him in the middle of his prime. I mean, I do. There's a part of me that wants to bet Arman, but I'm trying to make less donations, on these kind of spots. Merab, I can see very clearly the path for him going out there and outperforming his price or dominating the fight. I cannot picture Arman dominating this fight in any way. I just can't picture it. And I can picture Islam dominating this fight. So I don't think he's going to. I think it's going to play closer than the line personally, but I don't know. I don't think it's the time to get off of Islam, to fade Islam yet.
I
agree. I agree with what Cyramu says.
I was going to say that was kind of similar to what we were talking about in the co-main event. It's after Arman at lightweight, it's I
mean, who's going to beat him? I can't see Gamrot beating him. That would be No way. Dan Hooker's not gonna. We already saw that fight. That's not gonna happen. Lightweight's pretty.
Moicano's not beating him if he gets a win here.
Dude, I saw
that would be funny.
I saw a couple people tweet like a week ago. They were betting like Moicano like future to be like champion at like plus 8,000. I was like, that should be like plus 100,000. Like even if they fight, Islam's gonna be like minus 1,500 against him. Literally, like that is what the line would be. I think. I always thought Benny had like an okay chance in his prime against him, but he's getting older too now, and I think he's probably more fragile than he used to be.
Yeah,
but yeah, guys, that'll do.
Too.
Yeah, we didn't really talk totals too much, so I guess we'll put them out over the course of the week. Yeah. Maybe we could talk in the future, depending how much we can build this on Sundays about maybe doing a prop show later in the week. But
yeah. That'd be all right. I was gonna say I'd be down for like a Friday prop show if you want to do something like that, because I know most of the props aren't out other than just the totals.
Yeah. But yeah, we can talk about that, and we could, if we do that, we can just do it quick, like run 15-20 minutes, run through it.
Yep.
But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. Pumped that we're back this year. Pumped Lags is back with me every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, going forward here. As always, drop a like and subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. Hit us up if you want to chat, anything. We're always down. Anyway, guys, good luck on your bets this weekend, and we'll see you next week. Peace.